So you have that Masonic connection. You got a Mormon connection to the Council for National Policy. So, and of course you got, Marriott hotels everywhere, all Mormon owned. So, and then you have Mariner Eccles in 1935, who was the guy who perfected the Federal Reserve Act and Federal Reserve Bank by consolidating its power under FDR. So the Mormons have been very important players in the Black Pope's plan to bring America into fascism. In fact, the Mormons, they keep control of all the genealogical records for the purpose of knowing where all the Jews are, or any blue bloods, or whoever they want to keep track of. That's the purpose of the Mormon genealogy.
Was that originally done by the Order of Cincinnati?
I think the Order of Cincinnati had a hand in it, because the Order of Cincinnati can be traced to the Jesuits. And we have to remember A. Truott, and I had suspected this, but he confirmed it, that the Mormons were tied to the Jesuits through Brigham Young, and Brigham Young's dear personal advisor was Jesuit Pierre de Smet, when Pierre de Smet met with Brigham Young at Cedar Bluffs in Iowa and told him to go up to the Great Salt Lake and there settle in. So there's always been that connection, and then Brigham Young was also the personal friend of Albert Pike. So, yes.
Now, did you happen to hear the expose that Bill Cooper did on the Mormon elders and the upper echelon of the Mormon people, as far as a lot of the Mormon people are now becoming high recruits into the CIA?
I didn't hear that, but I knew that they had recruited Mormons into the FBI. Hoover did that in conjunction with recruiting graduates from the Jesuit universities of Marquette, Georgetown, and Fordham into the FBI.
Because that was based on the book that he did an expose on called The God Makers.
Oh, okay. I have a video called The God Makers, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's based on the book. Yes, absolutely.
Oh, excellent. Mm-hmm. Makes
now
perfect sense.
I'm looking here now. What we were talking about real quick was, looks like it's Mitt Romney, Jeb Bush, and someone named Bennett in a CNP PNAC offshoot group called I just had it in front of me and the screen refreshed. I believe it's like National, where is it? I'm scanning. I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm going to look for this real quick. Go ahead, guys.
Okay, the Council for National Policy has very strong ties to Le Cercle. And Le Cercle was involved with Gladio after the war. And these are men like Lucio Gelli, ex-Nazis, High Knights of Malta that were involved in bringing the Nazis to power, like Franz von Papen. He was one. Another one was the powerful German family of the Taxels, the Untaxels. So they're connected to Le Cercle. Le Cercle is absolute fascism because the purpose of reuniting Europe was to reunite a Roman Catholic, for the most part, Jew-free fascist Europe for the bringing about of the revival of the Roman Empire for the purpose of fulfilling prophecy.
That new group, by the way, Eric, is called National Council for a New America.
That's what it is, yeah.
Okay, National Council for the New America. I'm going to write that down. Yes. Because you see that's Hannity's America, brother.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Governor Bobby Jindal will also be a part of that.
The good Roman Catholic out of Louisiana.
Oh, yeah, and he believes in castration of the genitalia.
Oh, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Castro, that's nice.
Now, what can you tell us about how public... I'm aware that there might have been a couple spin-off groups about the CNP. Do you know anything about that?
No, I don't.
Okay.
No. But I would imagine they're doing it in a secret fashion and keeping us away from sniffing them out. It's kind of like finding the Nazis after the war. But that's a good point. Okay, we'll go on a little bit farther here. We have Eric Prince. He's tied to it. We mentioned that. We have the list is strictly confidential. We have the Church of Scientology involved. There's a couple of members involved with the Church of Scientology, which brings up Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise is a Knight of Malta.
Really?
Yes.
I just saw that today in that email which you had sent Nick. I was perusing that briefly, and I saw that, and I was just flabbergasted. How are the Scientologists and the Maltons combined, or is that just in the case of Tom Cruise?
Well, that's they're combined. Tom Cruise is one of their leading spokesmen, so he is going to be considered a tie to the Knights to Scientology. And remember, the doctrines of Scientology are essentially esoteric. They're hermetic. They are Gnostic. So there's really no difference.
Very New Agey, too. Yeah.
Very New Age. And, of course, the founder of the New Age movement, the father of the New Age movement, was the French Jesuit, Teilhard de Chardin. Okay. We have, it's been called the CMP, the Dominionist movement. The Dominionist movement, championed by John Whitehead and Rushdie, is really nothing more than fascism. It's not a return to the Reformation. It's not a return to reformed principles in politics of limited government, but at the same time individual liberty. No, it's going to be fascism. We have the Heritage Foundation with Fulner. We talked about that. His Georgetown connection.
Can we talk a little bit about the Heritage Foundation, Eric? Because
yes,
they happen to be on the list. They happen to be on the list as far as a group that co-opted the Tea Parties during the tax protest this year.
Okay, that's an important thought, because the Heritage Foundation from the very get-go has always been run by the Knights. Remember that Frank Shakespeare was one of the first heads of the Heritage Foundation, and he was a Knight of Malta involved in the Kennedy assassination. We also have Opus Dei in the Heritage Foundation, too. The Heritage Foundation is always touted by Hannity. On his Hannity's America, he brings it up on a regular basis. And that Heritage Foundation is also somewhat tied, at least to the maxims of the John Birch Society. It's all the false right-wing solution to the left-wing problems that these same men cause.
Which always occurs whenever there's a Democrat in office.
That's right. So the Democrats get to be the straw dog. They get to be the whipping boy to justify fascism. And you have this in the Reagan administration. What do you have before Reagan? Why, you have Jimmy Carter. You have the communism of Jimmy Carter. So we're going to solve that with Ronald Reagan and his right-wing fascism. And I say Ronald Reagan was the most horrible, terrible president this country ever had, because he committed high treason in being involved in acknowledging the sovereign state of Vatican City as a sovereign nation state. He had some 5 or 6 Knights of Malta in his very administration, including Alexander Haig, William Casey. You got William Casey in the Contra affair, openly admitting that the CIA is pushing drugs to fight communism.
Well, Eric, can we touch upon the Contra affair after our break in 2 minutes? Because there's a gentleman by the name of, I wouldn't call him a gentleman, he's a wolf in sheep's clothing, but you got a guy by the name of Larry Pratt, who was very heavily involved in the Iran-Contra affair as far as the, I forgot the name of it.
And Council for National Policy.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And he's the forerunner or the president or whatnot of Gun Owners
of America. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So we got a couple minutes here to kill, but I really wanted to touch about this Patriot movement that a lot of people they got their blinders on. They're looking for hope. They're looking for change, just like Obama claims. And, they're really being led down the wrong path. And, whatever we can to do to enlighten them would be great.
Okay.
I believe so as well. I believe the whole Patriot movement is really, it's just another kind of Ron Paul-esque Pied Piper technique to really draw people out and get anybody with, a little bit of willpower against the big gov to just draw them to the wrong conclusion, to have them jumping off a cliff by themselves.
That's right. It's to draw them into right-wing fascism. That's the purpose of it. And remembering that Ron Paul betrayed those of us who went to great lengths to discover that 9/11 was an inside job. Mm-hmm. He comes out and denies it. Well, that was absolute treason. And plus his Masonic connections are really undeniable through his family. So he is one of the players. And you can't be in politics in Texas for all those years without having Masonic connections. So he is a player. He's one of them, and his purpose is to foment the right-wing backlash to all this left-wing socialist communism.
Okay, everybody. Thank you, Eric, for that. We're going to continue here in a couple minutes. I'm going to play a song real quick. Hold on tight, everybody. A lot of information. Thank you for being... I'm back, everybody. This is Mystic Politics. I've got Eric John Phelps on the line, Everett Tucker as well. Everett, go ahead and say something here to everybody.
Oh, me? Okay, I've been enjoying this show immensely, and now I'm a new researcher myself, so a lot of these early 80s, 90s politics, for instance, I just heard about the John Birch Society a couple months ago when I was spewing about globalism to my father, and he said, well, you should join the John Birch Society, and I said, what's that? And he had said, it's a anti-communist think tank. And I went home and Googled it, and I text messaged him right back. I'm like, it doesn't look that way to me, Pops. And that it really that kind of started off me kind of waking up as far as how deep a lot of these roots go. And real briefly, I want an organization I don't know a lot about, but I wanted to see what you could fill us in on, Mr. Phelps, is the I mentioned it real briefly, the Royal House of Tudor and the Tudor Society, being that Phyllis Schlafly is a member of it, and I noticed that I believe their pin is an eagle, and I wanted to know how that tied in, and whether or not the Royal House of Tudor was mixed up with the Rothschild bloodline at all.
I'm sure they've interbred, because the Rothschilds have been the keepers of the Vatican treasury for centuries, at least 2 centuries, and especially when the Jesuits were suppressed and when they were conducting their French Revolution, Napoleonic Wars. The Rothschilds were great managers of their fortunes and treasures, which the Pope sought to get when he outlawed the Jesuits in 1773. But Phyllis Schlafly is a Dame of Malta. And so, therefore, since she's a Dame of Malta and her first allegiance is to the Archbishop Dolan of New York now, the new Archbishop, she will be using that society for the purposes of the Brotherhood. So it will be right-wing and it will be fascist. Remember, the Knights of Malta, they always come out on the right-wing side. On Contra, it shows the Contras, they're reading their Bibles, and they're the good guys, and they're fighting the Sandinistas. Well, but in the Jesuits, they're the ones that are advising Ortega and the Sandinistas. So the Jesuits are on the left-wing communist side openly, and the Knights of Malta are on the right-wing fascist side openly. And always in the end, the fascists, the right-wing, is betrayed and they lose. Whereas communism is always designed to win for the most part for the last 100 years. So that's why Germany lost. Fascism loses to communism. And so that's what they pulled the same thing off in Nicaragua. And they pulled the same thing off in Iran. They gave way to the fascist Shah of Iran must give way to the left-wing communist Ayatollah, or pro-communist Ayatollah. So that's their game. Yeah.
Now, where does I watched a very interesting. I learned a little bit more about it by watching The Secret Right, and how exactly do the CNP and the John Birch Society commingle? Because I was watching an interview with, and I rewatched it a couple times, with Tom Braden, Larry McDonald, and Pat Buchanan on Crossfire way back in the day. So how exactly do JBS, the CFR, and the CNP, how are they connected? Because they were portrayed in mass media to be enemies, opponents almost, when it seems like behind the scenes all these organizations are really just tied at the hip.
Right. The John Birch Society goes to a farther extreme than, say, Pat Buchanan and his Pat Buchanan, William F. Buckley right-wing politics. So with that, because Larry McDonald was getting a little bit out of order, calling for an investigation of the Council on Foreign Relations, he was showing how these super monopolistic cartel capitalists in America were busy financing communism, which leads right back to the Knights of Malta.